This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for KYaks.Guru. And our host today, as always, is Ken Ludmer. Hi, Ken. How are you?
Hi, Karen. Doing well with this technical issue we're having today, but we'll get through it.
Well, you know what? There's always two ways to skin a cat, and we found the second way. So,
okay.
What's been going on since last week?
Well, I mean, other than the storm that blew through here yesterday, wow, it was a big one. There were trees down everywhere. I'm talking about 8-10 foot wide trees that were twisted off their base.
Wow.
Actually, like a full circle, like 180 degrees around. The tree didn't fall over, it was twisted off. I mean, it was huge. Just a real scary storm came through here yesterday.
Well, hopefully today is a nicer, prettier day out there.
Yeah, and, it's calm.
And you have a special guest for us today.
Yeah, today the guest is Dr. Jill Elliot, DVM. She is a holistic vet who has been practicing for 25 years in New York City. And what's interesting about her practice is that although she was trained in conventional veterinary medicine, she went on to get more degrees and certifications in holistic veterinary practice. And she now uses a low-level cold laser. She will explain all of this and what she does, but I'd like to introduce my guest today, Dr. Jill Elliot.
Hi, Ken and Karen. Nice to be here. Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your background, Jill.
Sure. Interesting background is that I didn't go to vet school till I was 46, and so I had a few experiences before that. But once in vet school, I loved it. I graduated and started working as a conventional vet, loving what I was doing. Worked for 3 years with the ASPCA and saw all these animals coming to me, and I loved them, and I kept trying to cure them. And let's say they come in with a bladder infection or a skin infection or whatever, and I take care of it, and a month later they'd be back with the same problem. And this went on for a couple of years, and I really felt very frustrated, thinking there's got to be a better way or something to help them in addition to what I'm doing. And of course the owners were pretty frustrated as well. So I started to study, look around for other alternatives, and I was very intrigued with homeopathy. I volunteered with the person for a year, once a week, and saw her practice as a homeopath, and saw her actually curing cases, diabetic cases, getting off insulin, seizure cases, getting off their meds, and I became very intrigued. And so I went on to study homeopathy extensively, and even graduated from a 4-year school of homeopathy with people after doing all my animal homeopathy studies. So that's my background, and I could go into more of it if you like.
Tell us where you worked.
I worked at the ASPCA, and then I started my own practice. And so I did my own practice out of other vets' offices. And in addition, I worked 2 days a week as a conventional vet just to keep my finger in the pie, so to speak, and keep all my conventional knowledge up. I also do conventional medicine, but mostly I try to do the holistic medicine whenever possible. So now in my current practice, I now work at a place called West Village Vet in New York City. I only work 1 day a week, which I love, but I still continue to do mostly homeopathy. And then in addition, about 12 years ago, I added low-level laser, which I'll talk about, cold laser, and chiropractic. Because again, I saw a colleague using this in his practice, and I again saw miracles, what I consider miracles. Dogs that were paralyzed were walking, dogs, that were having problems with their spine and were told they needed surgery or they would never recover, all recovered. So I got very interested and I took certification in those areas as well. Go ahead. So if you have a question, I'm happy to answer it.
Well, I'm just amazed with everything that you're telling us. So, I don't have a pet. So what would make me bring my pet to you rather than a so-called conventional veterinarian?
Great question. Many of the people I see, the patients I see, are patients who have gone through all the conventional alternatives and have come up still wanting a cure for whatever their problem was, or they've been told there's nothing more we can do for you. Some of them have been told to euthanize their pets. Some of them have just said, we're not sure what else to do, just make them comfortable. I see a lot of cancer cases that have been told that. And so people come to me usually at the end of the rope after they've gone through all these other things. And of course, they come with a poor prognosis. And so I get these, quote unquote, sometimes hopeless cases. But in spite of all that, I'll turn to homeopathy, laser, and chiropractic and really see results. I'd say about 80% of my patients that I see in that condition do well and do well for a long time.
So, Ken, you wanted Jill on today because obviously she's practicing veterinary medicine different than a lot of others. What is your connection?
Well, we've been together for 10 years. So we're an interested, family therapist and a holistic vet. So we'll get you one way or the other.
Yeah.
And the funny story with her is that I am the guinea pig.
I love
she
it.
has cured more of my issues. I mean, conventional medicine would not touch the kind of stuff you. Tell about the rash I had on my leg.
Yeah, we were home one day, and Ken, all of a sudden he got this. His toe swelled up, and he had just put his foot in the shoe or something and took it out and said, "Oh, look at my toe." His toe had swollen up, and there was a red line starting to go up his leg. And I thought, oh my God, he must have just been bitten by something like a spider or something like that. And I was concerned because it means that the poison is traveling up to, God forbid, a vital organ. So I reached for a homeopathic remedy. Apis is a great remedy that's used for any kind of allergy. It's made from the venom of the honeybee, and in homeopathy, the thinking is that like cures like. So anything in its original form that could cause a problem in its homeopathic dilution can cure that problem. So I always have a traveling bag of homeopathy with me. And I reached for the Apis and started giving it to him probably every 30.
It was traveling up my leg.
Right, it was moving up his leg, and I'm giving him this homeopathy every 30 seconds. And I said to him, if this gets to your knee, we're going to the hospital. We're not waiting for the worst to happen. And so we're giving him this remedy every 30 seconds. And
just three little tiny white dots, like you put it on your tongue, and it dissolves.
Okay.
That's all it is. It's tiny, like the smallest little goober you ever saw. And I said, this is it? No shot? No nothing? No, just let it dissolve.
So the homeopathic remedies are poured on these little sugar pellets. So he's doing it, and this thing is traveling up his leg, and it's just about, below his knee, and all of a sudden, we're getting ready to go to the hospital, it started to subside and go down, and his toe swelling went down, and that was it, all done. So it was pretty remarkable. I made a convert out of him many times.
I couldn't believe that those three little sugar tabs that absolutely cured the problem and stopped it in its tracks. It was like magic. I said, whoa, what was that? Where did you learn how to do that one? What other bag of tricks do you have? And then she started to tell me about all the bag of tricks that she has. That with this, what I like about homeopathy is that, well, if it doesn't work, it does no harm. Conventional medicine gives you all kinds of side effects and they warnings and all that. And, if you watch TV, then why would anybody take that stuff? Because it sounds like, you're going to die.
Exactly.
But homeopathy doesn't work that way. Homeopathy it either works or it doesn't, but it doesn't give you anything your body can't handle.
So
Yeah, I had go ahead. I had many more examples of things I've done, but go ahead if you have a question. I'd be happy
so
to answer.
my question is, I mean, many of us grew up with a lot of these homeopathic remedies. My mother and my grandmother always believed that, if you had a sore throat, if you had chicken soup, that sore throat would go away. And a lot of times it really did. But, today you get a sore throat and the first thing you start going for is ibuprofen and Tylenol and allergy medication. Why aren't we being trained more in, accepting homeopathic remedies?
Like everything else, the United States is far behind. It's well practiced around the world, only the United States. And you'd have to thank the AMA for that, because they were the same people that shut down chiropractic because they called it a quack science. Until now, you see all the million-dollar players in professional sports. Every team now has a chiropractor and a physical therapist on the squad. They don't need surgeons. They don't need these bone guys anymore, because, they were able to sue the AMA and show that their research was just as valid. So I think the same thing here is, the American Medical Association makes all these rules, et cetera, and the state laws and compensation and everything. It's all one big program.
Okay.
The rest of the world doesn't seem to operate that way. If you go to Asia, there's stores that just have plants all over the place, and they'll make the remedy right from the natural plant right in front of you.
In addition to that, it's a financial thing, because there were 27 schools of homeopathy in the United States, and the pharmaceutical industry closed them down. Homeopathy is very inexpensive. A tube of a remedy here in the United States is about $8 compared to what you would pay for your prescription medicine. Not only that, the remedies don't expire, even though they do have an expiration date, which they must have because the FDA insists on it. They really don't expire. So I have some of my remedies from, 1995 or 1990. They don't expire, and they're still good. It's a financial thing, as well as we're not schooled in believing it. And as Ken was saying, in other countries, people are raised with it from day one. They're using it on their children. They're using it on, they may not use it on their pets as much, but they certainly use it on their children as they grow up. Germany, France, England, Asia, Mexico. We go to Mexico, and there are homeopaths all over the place. So it's very world used. It's the second most used medicine around the world, except in the United States.
You can go to Mexico, and if you wanted to take Apis, or if you had arnica, which is basically for pain and stuff, they'll give you a small bottle. Maybe it has 100 pills in it, for $4 or $5.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that will last you the whole year.
Or more.
Or more. It's inexpensive to produce, and there is wide distribution. Every local little store all over. If you go to a Mexican market, they'll have a homeopathic section. It's part of the culture.
Yeah.
And here we are, we're always putting down Mexicans. Oh my God, and they're way ahead of us. They're way ahead of us with medicine.
So how do homeopathic individuals like yourself, Jill, know which herb, which plant is going to help us in certain ways? What are you looking for? Because the other day I had somebody who told me, I'm still healing from knee replacement, and they said, are you taking turmeric? And I said, no. What is it? And they said, you can take that instead of an arthritis drug, which I'm not even taking either. But I started reading up about it and was like, well, this sounds like it's innocent enough, and if it works, I will be a happy person. But how do you know what to look for?
Well, in the first place, happy recovery and a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
Turmeric is a natural herb that is an anti-inflammatory. So I can see why they would suggest that.
Okay.
In terms of me, I studied, like I said, I graduated from a 4-year school, and what they teach you, there are thousands of remedies, and each of these remedies actually have been science. Even though they say there's no science with homeopathy, that's not true. They've been scientifically checked, and what they do proving. So they give a group of subjects a certain remedy, and they overdose them on it. And then they have them keep a journal, and every day they write down their physical and their mental symptoms. And by the way, homeopathy isn't for the only physical, it has a mental component. And so they write down all their symptoms, and then for each remedy, there's something called the Materia Medica, which lists all these remedies. And in that, they put down all these reactions, and they give them a grade 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if 100% of the respondents say, oh, after I took this remedy, my left eye felt painful, then that would be a 4. If one person said, oh, I felt the pain in my right eye, that would be a 1. So they kind of grade them with the reactions.
Okay.
And so and then they figure out what this remedy has an affinity for. So with a remedy like Apis, it's any reaction that would look like a honeybee reaction, a honeybee sting. So people taking Apis overdosed on it would say, my face swelled up, I turned red, I got hives, I couldn't breathe, I felt like I couldn't breathe, those kind of things. They would put that all into the Materia Medica under Apis. So if I'm looking, so I've studied many, many of these remedies, and then there are families of remedies. So there are animal families, there are mineral families, there are plant families. And if you look, let's say, at a snake family, the snakes have a lot of things in common, but each snake has something different. So if you've studied snakes and somebody comes to you and they have a lot of throat issues, obviously, because they're snakes, and this person comes with a lot of throat issues, you would look perhaps in the snake family for the remedy that clearly fit the person's symptoms, but also, and this is so important, fits their mental state. So, for instance, to jump over, if I had a cat that came to me with a urinary tract infection, let's say I had 2 cats come to me with a urinary tract infection, and they both have the same symptom. Right? They're having trouble urinating. They seem to be a little painful. They're having an infection. They've proven it with a urinary analysis. But one cat is very sweet and calm and loving and curls up in the mommy's lap all the time and all of that. I would give one remedy, which is pulsatilla, that has that personality, but also has an affinity for the urinary tract. But the other cat is very aggressive and bossy and, talks a lot and might also have a GI problem, and all that. That cat would get lycopodium, which has more of a bossy personality. It's much more complicated than that, but that's how I would distinguish different remedies. And in terms of family, certain families, again, have an affinity for certain parts of the body, but also I'm looking at, is this cat more of a flower family person or a flower family animal or animal family? And it all goes with personality. So it's very intellectually stimulating to try to figure out a case. And it's interesting. And what's amazing is I give a remedy for 3 days in a row, and then I tell them to wait, because once you give the remedy, it stimulates the body to do something, the energy of the body to go forward and try to cure the case. So you don't keep giving it over and over and over and over in most cases.
I have a question.
Sure.
Excuse me, Joe.
Sure.
You said before, I'm concerned that people listening are going to think you go and you're overdosing everybody, because you were talking about the research, and you don't actually overdose.
No.
Clear that up.
Sorry. In the research, that's how they determine what remedies have what action.
Okay.
And that's over. They don't do that anymore. So thank you for asking that. Sorry, I didn't. So that's how they compile their list of remedies and list of actions. But once that's done, that's done. And then people like myself, practitioners, refer to the Materia Medica to learn about each remedy.
How do you do the proper dose?
The proper dose, that's a funny question, because I have a very dear friend who was also a professor of mine in school, and we had this whole conversation, and he said some people, like he does 130C once a week. I do 130C or 1200C 3 days in a row and wait. It all depends on what works for you in your practice. So there are people who prescribe low, there are people who prescribe high. There's no solid law. It's more of an intuitive feeling with each practitioner, which again makes it a little different for everybody. And
so you have changed over the years in terms of how you medicate the animals?
I pretty much have stayed the same course because it works for me. But if it doesn't work, then I will change it. In other words, if I give it once for 3 days and it doesn't seem to work, I may have them repeat it every week for a few weeks to see if that makes a difference. I might change the potency if I still think it's a good remedy. The problem is people with animals are impatient. Most adults can wait a little bit because they understand more of what's happening. But people with animals are very anxious to have their pet cured. So I would do more frequent dosing with animals than I would with people, for that reason.
What I like about holistic medicine is that what you're telling me is you're listening to the symptoms, but you're also looking at the personality that goes with those symptoms.
Absolutely.
And we don't see that in a lot of modern medicine today. If you walk into a doctor's office, whether it's for yourself or for your animal, and you say, I've been having diarrhea or my cat's been having diarrhea, it's like, okay, well, what else is part of that whole story? And that is what we're missing. And obviously, you know that as well as anybody. How can we as a people say, hey, listen to what I'm saying? Don't just listen to the symptom, but listen to who I am and what my life is like, and how can we fix this? Like you said, if it's a very sweet,
you
lovable
go on
cat.
New Cleveland Radio.
We'll do it more on here because I'm not an ill person, but every time something gets triggered and I call the doctor, there's always an expensive prescription, which Medicare doesn't want to pay for, okay? And it's like, well, do I really need the prescription? Do I have to spend all that money? Or is there something else I could do? Could I just change
we have it absolutely backwards in this country, where you should start off with the least invasive, least expensive treatment. And if that works, you're done.
Right.
If it doesn't work, then maybe you have to go up the line. And the last guy you see is the surgeon. Where here in so many cases is they send you to the specialist first because they don't know how to handle the problem.
Right.
And you have very expensive treatment that is really kind of unnecessary. What I like is that people who come in with Jill's office, she's telling me all the time how people, like, all of a sudden their eyes are open, their mouths are open, they can't believe how simple it is for their pet to get better. And it's more difficult to treat the person than it is the animal.
Right.
She'll always come out. I like to give some of the remedies to the pet owner, because they're the ones that have the anxiety. They're the ones that are hovering. Right. They're the ones that are overfeeding. They're the ones that are doing all this stuff to the animal, thinking they're caring. And it's really interesting that how she has to sometimes just keep the pet owner away from her being able to help the animal.
How interesting.
Yeah.
I remember.
By the way,
yeah, go ahead.
By the way, for your healing and to speed your healing and pain, arnica is one of the most important homeopathic remedies. Arnica montana. I don't go anywhere without it, and it's 30C or 200C. And for any kind of post-surgery, I tell my patients always to give it a couple of times a day for at least a week, and it helps with bruising, pain, swelling, and calming your mind as well, because when you've gone through something like that, there's always a trauma to the mind,
right,
as well as the body. It's not just the body, and so it helps with that too, because I know after surgery you're thinking about all kinds of things they did to you, and it just helps to calm all that. And so again, arnica not only helps with the physical, but helps with the mind. So you might try it if you're still in any kind of discomfort.
Well, I feel like I did before I had my total knee replacement. So if that explains it, I mean, I'm still exercising, I'm still walking, I'm still doing all the things that I want to do, but I'm doing it with discomfort. And, now it's time to do some natural things that I think will be better for me. And when a person brings their animal to you, okay, I understand there's a lot of anxiety because, this is their baby. Do you sometimes find that what they're telling you is wrong with their pet is not quite right, that you diagnose it differently?
Well, the first thing I always ask them is for the medical records. I don't want to give the impression that I don't do conventional medicine. I'm always looking to hear it from the medical professionals, and I always ask them if they're coming for the first time and haven't done any diagnostics, that we do some diagnostics to make sure we have the problem at hand. Sometimes the diagnostics come up empty, and then you just go on signs and symptoms. But I like to get the medical report. I had somebody call me yesterday, hysterical because their pet was in the hospital, and they wanted my opinion on how to go forward, but they couldn't give me any clear information. So I asked for the record, read the record, and then could advise them. People often, when they're anxious, don't have the correct information. One of my pet peeves is that a person goes to a conventional practice, has a lot of things done, spends a lot of money, but they don't walk out with a report about all the blood work and the vet's recommendations. They don't walk out with a piece of paper in their hand, which I think is terrible. And then they come to me and they have nothing. And then we have to send for the records and all of that. So first, I do look at all of that. Once I have that, then I can decide what the person is telling me. But often the patient, the mother, the owner of the patient, has some other information that wasn't requested in the other, as Ken was saying, in the other appointment. And so I try to ferret out, does this happen? How often does this happen? When does this happen? Is it after eating? Is it when they wake up? Is it in their sleep? Is, whatever they're complaining about. What color was the diarrhea? What, how forceful? There's a lot of other information which helps me then determine what remedy I might give. Or we haven't talked about it here yet, but I do laser and chiropractic. And that also can help with so many of these problems, including musculoskeletal issues, which are, again, usually referred off to the surgeon or the orthopedist and requires a lot of other very expensive.
Tell her about some of the paralyzed animals.
So getting into chiropractic and laser, it's an amazing, it is, by the way, low-level laser is starting to be used extensively in vet practices, which I'm thrilled about, especially with horses, but in small animal practices, in the rehab practices now, they're all using laser, which is great. Chiropractic, not so much. I don't know why, but they're just not. Again, maybe a prejudice like in human chiropractic. But I've combined them. And I don't do actual chiropractic where I manipulate the body. I use a tool called an activator, which is used by people who treat people, human chiropractors that treat people. And it just adjusts the spine. So it realigns the spine. And I've had patients come to me with normal limping and things like that. They come in pain, and after 1 or 2 treatments, they're actually hopping out and they feel great. But a few of my most outstanding cases have been paralyzed animals. One woman came in she was a vet tech at another vet office practice. She had this 17-year-old cat, Toby. I remember him and her very well. And it's a couple of years ago. And she brought Toby in a carrier, and he was lying down flat like a pancake with his legs stretched out. And he was stiff like a board, and he couldn't really move. She was keeping him going by feeding him as best she could. He was able to poo and pee and all that, but he couldn't stand up, and he couldn't turn over, and he couldn't groom, and couldn't do anything. So she had tried everything at her other vet practice that they could think of, and her vet, who was her boss, suggested euthanasia, which she just refused to do without trying some more things. So she brought him in. She explained the whole situation. I took a look at him, did an exam, and we didn't know why he was paralyzed. We didn't, she had done diagnostics. There was nothing they could find. There was no spinal lesion or anything like that. So I explained that we would do chiropractic and laser on the cat, and I would hope that he would get better. And I usually do 1 chiropractic treatment and 2 lasers, 1 an hour apart, for my first 2 visits with a client, especially when it's sick as this one. So we did that, and she came back the next week, and we did it again. But she said even in the week in between the 1 and 2 sessions, the cat had started to move its legs a tiny bit. Okay. So she came back again, and we did another 2 lasers and a chiropractic. She came back every week for about 6 weeks after that, and we did 1 chiropractic, 1 laser. And after about 3 treatments, the cat started to bend its legs. Gradually, it started to get better and better. It started to be able to turn over. It started to be able to groom itself. And by the time we finished, the cat was able to stand and was back to normal.
Wow.
And yeah, exactly. That was our response.
Yeah.
I wish I had gotten that on video. I never took a video of it. And that was outstanding. Outstanding. Just amazing.
So during this pandemic, a lot of people have been going out and getting pets, okay? What should they be doing specifically now that maybe they're going back to work or they're going about a more normal lifestyle and leaving the pet, alone for periods of time? Is there anything special they should be doing?
Well, there are homeopathic remedies for separation anxiety, and it's true, a lot of the pets are going to have separation anxiety because they've had their owners with them 24/7 and all for 3, 4, 5 months, and all of a sudden the owners are going back to work. So there are certain remedies. Arsenicum album is one for very severe separation anxiety. Phosphorus is another for separation anxiety and fears. There are remedies. So
there's even ones for barking.
It doesn't work so well all the time. I wish they were better. But there are remedies for separation anxiety. And, you can go online. Sometimes I do this too when I'm not sure of something. And just go to, I think it's Homeopathy Works, and just ask them, what's a remedy for separation anxiety? And you can ask that online, and they'll give you 6 or 7 remedies. So a person can try them. I mean, I don't think they can harm their animal if they just try a few. Or they could contact a homeopath and get professional help. There are also books that are written with excellent suggestions, and everybody that comes to me, I give them a list of reading that they should do, and there are certain books on that reading list that are excellent. One is Homeopathic Care for Cats and Dogs by Don Hamilton. He's terrific. I know him, and he's a great vet, and he explains everything. Another one is a very good vet in London, in England, George MacLeod, who has a book, Homeopathy for Cats and Homeopathy for Dogs, 2 different books. And you can learn so much from those books and get so much good information. And they explain things so that if you're a novice, you really understand what you're doing in some sense. And I tell all my clients to read up on this, get these books, so that at 2 or 3 in the morning when something happens and you have a little homeopathic kid at home, you can take care of the problem. There was a guy in New York, Cy Sims, and he said an educated consumer was the best thing. And I believe in that. I believe people can do this at home, certainly for emergencies, maybe not for critical chronic conditions, but people, they can do this.
What's your, as a family therapist, I never advertised. And I had a practice for 40 some odd years. And how I got my referrals was from my former patients. They were the ones who sent in their cousin, their brothers, their aunts, their uncles for treatment. How much referrals do you get from your clients, and what's your rate of return?
Well, I think I get at least 50%, referrals from my clients. And with one animal passes, they certainly come back with the next animal and the next animal. So I have clients that will contact me even today, and they'll call and they'll say, do you remember me? I saw you 13 years ago, and now I have Fluffy, and I'm, having a problem, and I thought only of you because you cured, Rex 13 years ago. And I'm so touched by these people who remember me and come back. And then there are so many people who say, oh, my dog is having a problem, and my next door neighbor told me you helped her dog, and she said, I have to see you. So I hear that a lot. And then I'm on the internet, of course, my website, NY Holistic Vet, and people find me through that. So they come, they call. It's wonderful. I love it.
What about in this current pandemic? Are you able to do Skype or able to do Zoom, or are you able to do virtual sessions?
Yes, I do telemedicine through Zoom or through Skype. Not Skype so much, but FaceTime. And I usually arrange it that they contact my office and set it up through my office so that everything, the payment, everything goes through the office,
Sure.
not directly to me. But absolutely. And again, NewYorkHolisticVet.com. They can find me and all my office information and get in touch. That would be great.
So if I'm living in Ohio or Missouri and I want to follow up and find somebody who's a holistic vet like yourself, would I just look under veterinarians? Would I contact you? Just ask, who you might know? How do I find out?
There is a Homeopathic Vet Association, and they have a website, and it's avh.com or .org. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
But if you go on that, AVH, like A like apple, V as in veterinarian, H like in homeopathy,
Okay.
They can then look for how to find a practitioner. And there are practitioners all over the United States as well as Canada. And Puerto Rico, by the way, I was in a class with a guy from Puerto Rico. And they will be able to find a practitioner near them, and they'll get all their contact information.
Now, as a vet, and, Ken, you being a therapist, do you have any pets?
No, I had so many in the past. I had a dog for 14 years and 3 different cats that lived till 17 and 18. And I feel like now I've done my thing. I see pets all the time. But we travel a lot. We leave the country for 4 months in the winter, so it would be very hard to have a pet
Sure.
at this time. And I miss them. I miss coming home to a little furry friend, but since I see them every week, I'm okay with that.
Well, you sound marvelous, and you sound so caring that I'm hoping that more people will, listen to this. And whether it's for your pet and you're finding a vet who specializes in homeopathic solutions, or if it's for yourself, the more I read up on all these different herbs and flowers and things that, might make me feel better, and they're probably not going to make me sick at all, it's like worth trying. But my question on that is, sometimes some of these homeopathic doses you can get at the pharmacy, but then they add other stuff to them. Where should we be buying these? Should we be going to a specialty store?
Whole Foods will sell a lot of the homeopathic remedies, usually in a 30C potency, which most conditions can be fine with 30C.
Okay.
They may also have a lower potency, like a 6C, which are lower potencies I usually use for supportive organs. So if I'm doing a cat with kidney disease, I might put them on a 6C every day to support their kidneys of a certain remedy. But normally I use a 30C for different diseases, if it's just a once or every other week or something like that. Then there are homeopathic pharmacies online. Washington Homeopathic is an excellent pharmacy to order from. I order a lot of remedies from Europe. There's a pharmacy called Helios that I actually visited when I was in school in England. And there's a wonderful pharmacy. It's a little building, and if you walk in there, it's like the old-time pharmacy that we used to have here, where you walked in and you said, oh, my knee hurts, and then gave you the right remedy. The pharmacist could do that. This Helios, you walk in with the same thing, my leg hurts, blah, 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 and they ask you a bunch of questions, and they go up in the back and make the remedy for you. So it was very inspiring.
Absolutely.
And And by the way, in the morning, they all stand around and do meditation every morning to get started. So I order a lot of remedies from them. However, because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to get mails from Europe. So now I stay with Washington Homeopathic. The big manufacturer is Boron. Most people are familiar with the Bluetooth Boron. And they're fine. You can order from them. And Amazon, you can go on Amazon and order most of the Boron remedies. Not a problem.
Okay.
So I don't like what I call mishmash homeopathy, which is remedies that are a lot of mixed up together.
Right.
A lot of remedies, you'll see there are like 14 things in one remedy. I don't usually do that. I believe it's important to know which remedy is working and then either repeat that or change the potency or do something like that. The mishmash remedies are okay. Sometimes they work, but it's not the way I work.
Well, I'm so glad, Ken, that you brought Jill on today. We'll have to do this again in the future because there's a lot of good information here that, we don't want people to miss. And part of what you're offering on your podcast is information for people to decipher and see how it works for them, correct?
Correct.
Absolutely. So we'll be back again next week, and you're going to have another guest on. Do you want to give us a little teaser?
Well, next week we're going to have Amy Ferris. She is right out there with the women's movement and quite a famous author. She wrote Marrying George Clooney and 4 or 5 other really good books. She is a screenwriter, has been speaking all over, has workshops all over the world. And I'm so excited about having her on next week. And Katie bar the doors when Amy comes in the room. She doesn't hold back. So looking forward to it.
Well, we certainly are too. And we want to remind everybody of your website. It's KYaks, KYaks.Guru, GURU. And you've got some great blogs out there. And I want to encourage everybody to take a look and continue to listen to your podcast every week. Okay?
Well, thank you, Karen, and heal up, girl. Hope
all right.
Feel better.
It's been a pleasure, Karen. Thanks.
Thank you, Jill.
Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye now.